All right, we're back on the media mindset. We've got Serena, my good friend from business school 5 years ago. We met, and I'm really excited about this conversation today because when you were first starting out, Serena, you came to me for advice almost exactly 5 years ago when you were starting the good Zing. And it was a great convo. One, entrepreneurs I think have a lot because you had this idea, you didn't know how to make it happen, and you knew like zero. Like,
I would say less than zero.
About content. You had a few different careers. You were super successful in other things, but content, like almost nothing. And you brought to life 5 years later, Good Zing is this awesome site, and you've learned so much. And now you teach me things every time we talk. So it's a great journey that we get to explore today. And I'm really excited to do it. But do you want to start and just kind of tell us who you are and a little bit about Good Zing?
Sure. So as Kenny said, we met at business school 5 years ago. Before business school, I was actually developing wind farms in the northwest of Scotland. So totally different to anything I'm doing now. But before that, just when I graduated college, I had maybe partied a little bit too much. And I ended up getting viral meningitis, which then developed into chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and something called POTS, which basically in essence meant for 2 years I was totally out. I was in bed, couldn't move, was sort of at the worst point sleeping 20 to 22 hours a day, couldn't get out of bed. It was, let's be honest, pretty shitty. And I tested every single type of alternative healthcare there was, because at that point, what I had was something that doctors didn't totally believe existed. Or at least there was no scientific proof of a way to diagnose, so there wasn't a way to treat. And after 2 years, I managed to get a bit better, started my career, so at that point I was sort of 25, 26. Got on with my life, did a couple of different careers, as I said, developed wind farms, came to business school, and then during business school I sort of had this odd idea to try and democratize access to everyday health and well-being information. So what I wanted to do was try and improve people's self-care and health literacy and help people find all the information that when I had been sick, I had really, really struggled to find. And so I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it, but in essence, what I wanted was if you had come to me, and I know you've got a little baby daughter, and if you came and said, you know, she's got diaper rash, what do I do? And it's amazing how you talk to all the different mothers, the grandmothers, doctors, nurses, everyone always has different home remedies and different products that they swear by. And I realized if I reflected on all my conversations, whether it was at business school, people talking about stress or the opposite, hangovers, or people just talking about exhaustion, everyone always wants to give their best health tip, their best piece of knowledge. And so what I wanted to do at that time was create a purely user-generated content platform where everyone could share rather than the problems they've gone through. So sort of rather than a forum where you're complaining about your health issues, what I wanted to create was something which was entirely solution-focused. So home remedies, products, whatever you swore would help you with those everyday health issues that you don't necessarily go to the doctor for, or you're too embarrassed to talk to your friends or a doctor about, or the issues such as chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, which are chronic issues which there's not an easy solution for. So that's when I was like, I'm going to create this platform. I don't really know how it's going to work, but I kind of knew Kenny at business school. I'm going to go and see him and pick your brain. And at that point, I was literally like, it'll be really easy. You just build a website. I don't really even know how to do that. And you'll just get people to put in health tips and it'll be really easy. And then I came to see you and you dispelled me of every single notion I had in one easy hour session.
Yeah, not great advice back in the day.
No, it was actually really good advice because it made me take a step back and sort of question everything. And I should have taken a bit more of your advice back then. But you know, you were very clear on thoughts around user-generated content as opposed to slightly more editorial content. And I totally ignored you for the first year of the platform until I sort of realized that actually we did need to up the level of content. And actually, as well as users, people wanted to hear from expert practitioners. So in essence, about 4 years ago, I started building out the platform and we properly launched in May 2017. And what we're trying to build out now is Yelp or TripAdvisor for everyday health and well-being, so that you can go on for any of these everyday issues that so many people suffer from, whether it's flu, FOMO, fear of flying, or sort of acne or anxiety, and find every single tip, irrespective of whether it's Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, Western medicine, home remedy, products, all in one place, rated and reviewed, so that you can actually understand all of your solutions without necessarily just going to a pharmaceutical solution or just ignoring that there might be some underlying issues going on.
So a big part of the site is still user-generated content, correct? So what are some of the strategies that you've worked to develop over, I guess, the 2 years post-launch? Congrats on hitting in 2 years. Always a big step in any website's life cycle. What are some of the strategies you all have developed, and maybe what are some of the strategies you're looking to implement regarding quality of user-generated content? Because particularly in the wellness space, and that's an editorial space I've been in for a long time, there's so much misinformation, and while there are a lot of topics where there are differing opinions and the correct solution isn't necessarily correct for two different people in the same way, there's a lot of hoaxes, there are a lot of just things are untrue, whether it's the anti-vaccine movement,
call them the snake charmers,
whether it's people claiming that wind farms cause cancer. There's just a lot of stuff that's categorically false out there, and in the realm of user-generated content, that can be difficult to sift through and categorize. So what are some steps you all have taken?
So it's quite interesting. So the very first iteration, as I said, was entirely user-generated content, and the tips we were getting were sort of like 3 or 4 words. So let's say for a hangover, it might be eat a banana, which is fine, but why are you advocating eating a banana? So what we did is we realized that users might have the solutions, but like pulling out the tip. So when people write down content, what we've realized is they just sort of give the bare minimum. But when you actually have a conversation like this, so let's say you'd asked me that conversation over email, I'd have written 1 sentence. But actually when you have a conversation with people, then you can pull out all the information. So what we realized was we actually had to go to practitioners, we had to go to experts. So how we've improved the quality of the content is it's still user-generated, but what we've got is over 200, close to 250 verified practitioners, where we've verified them through their certification that they are actually qualified in what they're claiming to be qualified. Because the other part, as a little side note, as I'm sure you guys have seen in the wellness space, is there's a whole lot of people who are claiming to be qualified in giving health information, but actually their qualifications would be similar to mine, which is they've had a health issue and they've managed to work through it, which is great. And that's a key part of the user-generated content. If you've had that issue, you deserve a seat at the table. But at the same time, consumers need to understand where the different health content's coming from. So what we've done is we've got these over 200 verified practitioners, and they, as soon as we've got their certifications and we've proven that they're actually verified, then they go onto the platform as an expert, and then they can start just adding in their content as and when they want. And we've seen that as soon as someone's verified and they've got their photo up there and links to their social media and their website, and that they've got their bio with all their credentials, that's when the content starts to rapidly improve. And that's when it's almost like, and I hesitate to use the word advice because it's not really advice, it's just information sharing. But that's when they start to take it a lot more seriously, and they lay it out in the same way you would a recipe. So that is also one way we improved it, is the original design, again, terrible, was, just what's your top tip for a headache? What's your top tip for insomnia? But then what we started to do is look at it a bit more like a recipe, i.e. a description, what you'll need and what you'll do. Because so often if you talk to friends or you talk to a doctor and they'll say, well, trying to think of a tip, but let's say for anxiety, journaling really helps. If you're someone like me, I'm like, what does that actually mean? What should I be journaling? When should I be journaling? Is it, so it's about getting that detail to really help people.
So with these experts, it seems the world is trending towards experts, which makes sense because we've been doing a lot of the same work on all of our sites, trying to bring experts in for at least a quote on every piece, if not writing or reviewing the pieces. And generally, they're pretty receptive to doing it, but it is a lot of work to go out and get medical professionals or licensed people to agree to participate on your site. So 250, that's a huge number. What's been your process to go out and get these people to, one, not only sign up, but to sit there and contribute knowledge on your platform?
Hustle, and I'm not giving up, if I'm totally honest. But it was interesting because the very first expert that we got on the platform is a wonderful nutritional therapist in the UK called Zoe Sterling. And the process of signing her up was literally about 2 or 3 months. We had coffee once or twice, we had a couple of phone calls, she did an article, we edited it, we put it up. But as soon as we sort of had 5 or 10 and we had quite well-known names in the industry, they might not be famous names, but they were names respected by other practitioners, then it sort of got the ball rolling. The other thing is we're so clear about what we're trying to do. It's about democratizing access to everyday health and well-being. So I'm not going to say never, but I'm not going to say never, then I go, we never. But we really, really don't want to charge consumers to ever access the content. So what's quite interesting about Good Zing is we're entirely bootstrapped. Because what happened was when I first came up with the initial idea, and I was talking to people like you, Kenny, and my advisor, Lisa Winning, who had a content business, and a whole bunch of other people, a couple of the VCs I reached out to were all very enthusiastic, but they said that it's great because then you can charge consumers for access to these health tips. But that went against every grain of what it is I'm trying to do. I grew up with the NHS, which I'm deeply passionate about, and I very much believe in universal healthcare. So we will never charge, as far as I can make it, for access to the site. We want everyone, no matter if you're a single mother in sort of the middle of nowhere, you don't have time if your kid's got eczema and you're really struggling with insomnia, you don't have time to go and see a doctor necessarily. You're probably not indulging in self-care in any way, shape, and form. But if you can go on Good Zing for free without any barriers to entry and find out that actually maybe an oat bath might help your kid's eczema, or actually turning off your phone and sleeping with your phone outside your bedroom might help you with your insomnia, whatever the tip or the product is, then that's it. And I think experts really, all the practitioners we've been speaking to, they've really understood the vision of the company and the mission of the company and the fact that that's the very, very core of what we're doing. And so they've sort of come on board because they see this problem. But they also see the problem, as we've been discussing, that there's a lot of information that's quite misleading online to do with wellness. And especially seeing as, sort of it's a side note, but when I came to you, and I know when you guys started Barbend, wellness wasn't this big buzz trend that it is now. There was sort of a lot of niche players in it, and there were people who were obsessed with health, but now it's become a lot more mainstream. And as a result, there's a lot more people out there giving content which is not necessarily that verified.
Mm-hmm. What do you, and this is something that I've, an issue that several websites I've worked with have had over the course of my career in content, and there are novel solutions to it, and every brand, every content outlet I've worked with or worked on kind of has their own workaround or way to address it, but it is something that inevitably comes up if you work with enough experts in similar fields, and that's the issue of when experts disagree. Which will happen. It could be the driest, most straightforward, most conventional wisdom thing you can imagine. Experts will have disagreements, and that's just the complexity of the human body and of wellness. How do you approach that when that happens?
So 2 ways. We've had some practitioners sort of go on the site and look at some of the tips, and generally, quite interestingly so far, it's not been practitioner on practitioner. It's been practitioners looking at some of the user-generated tips, and they've been like, look, I really disagree with this. Right. Please, can you take it down? And we very much got across the site reporters inappropriate for every single tip. But what I always push back on is the voting mechanism. So we've got a general voting mechanism where Joe Public, any of you guys can go on and vote up a tip or vote down a tip. Does it work? Does it not work? But when we realized that there was this potential issue, we've actually added in a voting feature for experts. So if you're a verified expert, you can endorse or disagree with the tip.
And it displays it, right?
And it displays it, and what then the expert can do is explain their reasoning. So the whole point is to try and give access to users. So, I mean, I know that if I Google something to do with, let's say, my fibromyalgia, and I will get lots of different diverging opinions. The whole point is if there's a diverging opinion on good Zing, you can actually see why. And so consumers, patients, whatever you want to call us at this point, we can actually start to take that educated understanding and not be like, well, one doctor said this and one doctor said that, or nutritional therapist said this and an Ayurveda person said this. You can actually look at it and understand why they're disagreeing, and then go to your healthcare provider and actually have a proper discussion about it. So we're trying to solve it through that feature.
Interesting.
Follow up on that, like these are some really cool ideas that weren't in the original Good Zing plan, I know.
No.
So, and I'm sure you'll have more ideas to come, but where are these generated? Are people asking for this? Or are you just kind of living with the content and coming up with the ideas yourself? Are you seeing other brands inspiring you? Like where's the innovation coming from in your content execution?
So, I mean, what's kind of entertaining is, let's say the first iteration of the startup, when we were looking at the voting, it was thumbs up, thumbs down for a tip. And we put it out there in the very, very early MVP when I was actually working out of the Columbia Startup Lab. And there were about 50 or 60 people in the Columbia Startup Lab, and I would just literally go around with my laptop and be like, look at this, what do you think? Because I didn't know, and I still don't really always know, how to sort of do that in a more scalable way. And it was quite interesting because people were like, well, I agree with it in some ways, but don't agree with it the whole way. So unlike, let's say, Pandora with thumbs up, thumbs down, that doesn't necessarily work with health content. There's sort of nuances to it, as in, it worked a bit, but actually maybe you can add in this, or it didn't work for me, but it worked for my sibling. So I'm trying to the team is trying to constantly innovate and understand what consumers want. So what we often do is sort of the easiest way is actually I invite a whole bunch of friends or people to my house, and I'm like, play with it. Then I just sit behind and watch. And the idea for the endorse or disagree came from watching experts and the verified practitioners play with the site and watching them interact with each other. And sort of a dietitian saying about a nutritional therapist tip, actually I don't really agree with that. How would I put that on the site? And so we went away and thought about it and sort of designed that feature to try and help. So, there's two actually great sites that we have looked a lot at. One's Israeli and I think one's from San Francisco, where they're doing a sort of similar thing what we're doing, but with rating pharmaceutical drugs for very serious issues. I think they're called Trato and iodine. And so they've been doing it for everything from like schizophrenia to very serious other mental health issues. And with that, it's not a huge amount of content, but it's people giving their experience of those pharmaceutical drugs. And so looking at sort of those kind of things has sort of definitely helped give us some inspiration.
You mentioned earlier, and a point that I really like, and this is something that we actually really try and emphasize in certain categories of content we have. I would say the things that trend a little bit more or could be interpreted as a little bit more medical. And we say, this content has been to inform, but if you have any particular questions, everyone's experience is individualized. Like, seek out your healthcare provider and have this conversation.
So,
you mentioned that earlier in the conversation. I'm just curious as to your approach and how that informs or at least helps shape the usability or user experience of the site.
So, I mean, when I started, I was incredibly naive. The site actually was originally called Now Cure Me. And then I found out, especially when I moved back to the UK, that if we had the word cure in there, actually we would never be able to monetize the platform. Because the word cure, I mean, how do you prove that having a banana cures a hangover? And I keep using that example because it's just sort of a very basic one. And the reason we've done this platform, or the reason I've done this platform, is very much to inform, to educate, to improve health literacy, to improve self-care. Everybody is different. everyone's genetics are different. How people feel pain is different. How people feel symptoms is different. So it makes total sense that how they heal is very different. So I'm going to give you one sort of example. When I had chronic fatigue, I tried literally everything under the sun. And I had a friend called Charlotte in London who at the same time I had chronic fatigue was also going through it. For her, she did acupuncture. She was literally like, Serena, this is amazing. You've got to go and do it. And it really, really worked for her. For me, it worked a little bit, but then I tried something called the lightning treatment therapy. For me, totally worked. And that sort of really, really got me to where I am today. Called up Charlotte, was like, you should try the lightning treatment. Didn't work at all for her. So we're very much aware that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for someone else, but it's good to have all the options out there. And the whole point is to discuss it with your healthcare provider, because at the end of the day, going back to the banana example, if you're allergic to bananas, you really shouldn't be eating a banana, but maybe you're going to understand that actually the potassium in the bananas and the other foods that you might be able to get from potassium to help relieve that hangover. We're also very much aware that a lot of people, when they see content online, that they take it as literal. And, you know, in the same way as I grew up believing that doctors are gods and know everything, some people see information, and I don't want to use the word fake news today, but, you know, in wellness, there's a lot of sort of fake news. So we're trying to be as professional as possible on that. And what we've actually done is we've got verified by a company in the UK, and I know that they're actually coming to the US at the moment, called Wellspoken. And the whole point of it is putting a verification seal. And we went through a whole training process, the whole team went through it, both on the content we deliver through the site and through social media and through newsletters, that the content we're giving out is credible, that it's, how do I say this? That it's credible, but it's, we're trying to be as trustworthy as possible. And so we went through that whole process when we were originally going through it. They found a whole bunch of different issues. So let's say when we were talking about events, we were using the word cure too much or treat. And so we've been toning down that language. And so we're verified through that. We're also going through the verification for both the NHS App Store and through OnCode, which is Health on the Net. I don't know if you guys have done that. But so we're doing all of these kind of different things to show the readers that we're trying to be as kosher as possible, and we're trying to be as responsible as possible so that they can trust our site.
It's signaling they're almost like accreditations.
Well, they are accreditations, but what's kind of insane is some of the accreditations in the health space, they want to charge you 20 or 30,000 per year to have that accreditation stamp, but we are so bootstrapped. I mean, that's literally a year of our budget, so we could never do that. But then there are ones that are just so well-meaning, and they are about delivering credible and trustworthy content and about trying to build the wellness industry up. But we've been also working with amazing lawyers to put statements everywhere on the site, so people, when they do see a tip, they're immediately reminded that this is educational purposes only, it's for information, and if you are going to do something, you really should talk to your healthcare provider before starting.
Yeah, some great options. We're going to go explore some of those options.
I'll send them all to you afterwards.
Yeah. Fantastic. And I do know, I will say that I think that Europe is a bit far ahead of the US when it comes to, I know in the supplement industry, certifying supplements for purity and things like that, a lot of those standards actually take a few years to kind of hop across the pond and end up here, is something that you know, we've worked with a lot of, be it supplement companies or companies that are involved in healthcare in Europe, and it's just a much more arduous process to get certified and accredited over there, and that's actually kind of great, and I wish that we'd play a little bit of catch up here. So it seems like some of those things, you mentioned one of those companies is launching in the US pretty soon. Yeah. A lot of those kind of hit us a little bit later.
Well, I mean, the thing is, look, it would have been much easier not to have gone through that accreditation and just keep going. But if you really want to deliver honest healthcare content, then you do have a responsibility to every single reader to do it as trustworthy as possible and to hold their hands. Because actually, I don't know if you've seen, but there's an amazing study which shows that only 12% of adult Americans have a high enough level of health literacy to fully navigate their own healthcare experience. I mean, and that's such a low figure. So it's from everything with people doing all these HIIT classes and wondering why they've got high levels of inflammation and not understanding sort of that and the nutrition that they should be eating alongside. So if we can play some sort of role in actually creating a trustworthy world within wellness, then that's fantastic. But the other aspect in Europe is GDPR.
Sure.
Europe is sort of, I kind of want to see in some ways the internet as the wild, wild west. And it's sort of slowly regulation is coming in. But in the wellness space, and I can only talk in the wellness space, if we're not at the forefront of it, my biggest fear is that the health industry is going to properly come into the wellness space, including content, and they're going to force regulation on us. So as a wellness brand, as a business, whether you're providing content, classes, supplements, as an industry, we sort of all very much need to come together to self-regulate, to be the best that we can be, not to give out sort of snake charmer advice, because if not, as wellness and health become so intermixed, the regulation will just kill a lot of innovation in this space.
So, last question of today. I'm going to turn your original question to me. If you were to talk to yourself in 2019 or someone new starting a new content company, what advice would you give them? What are the
Go
big
see Kenny.
I'm not around. Don't do user-generated. I was wrong, right? So
No,
you proved me wrong. But what are the big opportunities in 2019, and what are the big what's got you concerned, and how does this translate for someone just starting out and someone who's relatively new in their their media site journey?
A big mistake I think we've done is we've gone wide very, very quickly. So we cover, I think it's almost 200 topics at this point. Very, very wide. And I do believe that niche content and good quality niche content is actually the way forward. Because
Are you saying that just to cater to our podcast?
no, I'm actually not. Because actually we're going to be, so we've realized the mistake, and when it comes to monetization, it's harder to monetize something which is very, very wide. And so we're actually going to be launching in May a slightly more niche business within Good Zing, according to one of the topics that we've seen the most traffic coming to, that we've got really, really good quality content on, to try and narrow it down. But if anyone was starting a content business, we're only written content at the moment. We've just started doing videos. So what we're doing is we're interviewing currently as many experts as possible, so that their content of their tips can be seen written or through video, and we can put it on social media and on the site. But everyone keeps telling me written content's dead, but I disagree. I still think that people consume, they read books. That's how a lot of the knowledge is out there. And so when people say, I'm starting a new content business, should it just all be videos? I still believe in written content, and I'm a big supporter of it. But what I am kind of excited is, and I could be totally off the wall here, but some of the VR stuff that's coming out, but especially with news reporting. So someone was telling me, she's a professor in international relations, and how they're delivering content to some of the undergrads is through VR and sort of getting them deep into immersive experiences. And I kind of wonder where content, and especially health content, is going to go to with that. Let's say with Barbend, is it sort of VR of the best press-ups or sort of the workouts? But the thing is, if I'm totally honest, I'm not a tech geek. I'm not even a content expert. It's just I'm deeply passionate about delivering the best health and wellbeing content. So I'm not really sure if it's the answer.
Well, I think that uncertainty, everyone's going to have to, all content producers are going to have to kind of work through that. Consumers are going to have to, in many ways, kind of vote with their eyeballs as to what they want to interact with, how they want to consume that content. And content's very data oriented, right? Yeah. It's you can see the analytics, you can see the metrics, you can see how people are engaging with that content. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. Sometimes people are engaging with the content that is lower quality, and you have to figure out where do I strike that balance of providing high quality content, but still meeting people where they are, where those eyeballs are. So I think it's okay not to necessarily know that answer, because it's going to be a balance of, being reactive to some of those outside forces, but also sticking to your guns and producing the content that you think needs to be out there in the world. And I think striking that balance is really the content entrepreneur's dilemma today and over the next 4 or 5 years.
But I mean, that's what I really appreciate about sort of meeting you guys and sort of having Kenny and sort of having a little community of people who are content entrepreneurs, because it's about having that network to have these kind of discussions. If you just sit sort of siloed, you don't really know what are the new things, or let's say you try something and it doesn't really work, and then you can pass that knowledge on. So it is all about collaboration.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for coming on. And where can people find out more about you and about the Good Zing?
Easy, www.goodzing.com. And Good Zing on social media. And my handle personally is Serena Op.
Nice. Two P's.
Two P's.
I was going to say.
Two P's.
Two P's.
Two P's.
Gotcha.
All right.
Excellent. Well, thank you
Thanks
so much for joining
me.
us.
This is really fun.